What is going on, everybody? Mike Beckerman, representative for Reps for Recovery here. Before we get started, I'd like you to hit the like button, the subscribe button. It only takes 2 seconds. Just put your thumb down right there. Today is our second addiction podcast, and as you notice, there's nobody with me. So I'm going to tell my story, give you guys a little background on me, what I went through. Going to go through my past in addiction, my upbringing, and then I'm going to tell you about what these last 9 months in recovery and sobriety have looked like for me. So really quick, big shout out to Grace Recovery and Wellness. If you or a loved one is suffering from addiction and you need help, feel free to comment below the video, or you can call the number right below the screen here, and we'll get you the help that you or they need. So for me, I grew up with everything. Parents were in the 1%, only child, got all the attention. And since birth just about, or since the age of 2 or so, I showed addictive behaviors. Every time we'd go for a walk, I had to stop at every house that had a basketball hoop and shoot a basketball. I just had to. I'd throw a fit if I didn't. And then fast forward a couple years and started playing video games, and I'd always be playing the video game nonstop. It was very hard for me to stop doing that because it took me out of whatever I was going through in life for that time. And then fast forward a little more, in junior high, about age 13, 14, I came across what I'd say is my first real negative addiction, which would be sex, both self-pleasure and with females. And that really took over my mindset. You can actually see it, grades, sports, everything went downhill because that was prioritized. As soon as I got home from school, instead of playing basketball or doing my homework, I'd be messaging whatever girl I was talking to, calling her, obsessing over it, and you can just see, like I said, my life go downhill from there. So high school, I went to a private Catholic school, and it was a bit of a utopia almost. Everybody came from money, everybody came from solid family backgrounds, and I wasn't really introduced into drugs and drinking until about 15, 16, and even then I really just kind of experimented. I liked it, but no real problems there. Really the big problem was females and sex in general. That's really what took up majority of my mindset day in, day out. In class, out of class, that was my number one priority and focus. And at the time, obviously I didn't know anything about addiction, or I just thought I was a normal teenager. Everybody's like, oh yeah, all teenage boys are like that. But today when I look back on it, I recognize that I think I was going a little above and beyond with all of it, especially with how I prioritized it versus everything else. So in high school, I got bullied a little bit. When I came in, I was 5'3", big afro, glasses, the dorky teeth, and got verbally abused, sometimes physically abused. And that, looking back on it, really messed me up about how I viewed myself. And so I was always looking for acceptance. And one thing that I really listened to a lot of was hip-hop, rap music, and watched a lot of television shows that basically portrayed to me that, hey, this badass lifestyle of selling, doing drugs, getting all the women, this is what you want to be. The cool thing is if you came from nothing and then made something of yourself. And I had come from everything, and in a way I was kind of ashamed about it because everybody was like, oh, you're soft, you have 2 parents that love you, that give you everything you need. And so it was kind of an embarrassment to me in a sense. And so finally I went to college. Now at first I went to a small school in Milwaukee for an engineering degree. I tried to walk onto the basketball team there. I did theater there. I was very active. And that was the freedom at college that really consumed me, because my parents were very strict growing up. Curfews, couldn't go out to a lot of parties, this, that, and the other. So when I got the freedom, I just went wild with it, right? And so started smoking a lot of weed, trying out a little Xanax here and there. And then I made a couple really close friends up in Milwaukee, some very wild characters. One was on the wrestling team. He was extremely intelligent, like a walking, talking Google. I mean, just one of those guys that just has an answer for everything, especially if it's a fact on something or something science related. And then the other one, he was on the basketball team when I was playing basketball, and he had the ability to convince you of anything. Crazy charismatic, but also crazy. Schizophrenic, bipolar disorder, but he was, again, extremely intelligent. Honestly, the best way to describe him, he'd make the perfect cult leader. That's how convincing this guy was. And so the combination of those two guys and me, we kind of got this idea that, hey, we're paying X amount for our marijuana, why don't we start selling the stuff? The one guy had some money to put up, and my other buddy, who was extremely intelligent, knew how to make edibles and everything, and so we just kind of went with it. And so we start, at the college, and then there was another colleges in the area that we'd sell weed to, and at first we just kind of did it so that we could smoke weed for free. But then it got to a point where we realized, oh man, we're starting to make money. It was starting to prioritize for both of us. We liked just that lifestyle of being able to, as soon as you get out of class, go to a buddy's house, sell him some weed, smoke weed, chill. It was very laid back. And we didn't have anything to worry about because, ironically, at the school we were at, all of the police and security guards spent their entire time protecting us from the outer skirts of Milwaukee. So the last thing in the world they were concerned about is if we were selling some weed. So we took full advantage of that. And from that, we started to really network out. And one of the people I networked out with was actually a girl who I taught church school with back in high school. And she had ended up out west. She ended up out there because she had gone to rehab herself. She'd left. And next thing you know, she's dating some guy out in Las Vegas. And so I'm talking to her on the phone, kind of telling her what we're doing. And she goes, my significant other, he's kind of a big deal out here. If you guys want to come out here and really take things to the next level, we can make it happen. And so being in that addict mindset, loving the lifestyle, loving the money coming in, we jump on it. And so we go out to Vegas. And we go out there, and it was a whole different ball game. I can tell you from experience, when you see in the movies, right, with all these super fancy mansions and all that from these big time drug dealers, it really exists. And it's amazing that they get away with it, but in some cases they do. Part of me feels it could be that they're almost too big to fail and they have ties with all these certain things, but that's not my place to tell. And so we go out there, we meet up with her boyfriend, and everywhere we're going, we're getting patted down, everything. The guys we're with have weapons, guns, and everything because some of the situations we're entering in are pretty dangerous. And this is completely new to us, especially as kids that were just in college, selling weed to my buddy from calculus class, very laid back. Everybody we sold to were our friends. There really weren't any sketchy situations, and we go straight from that to traveling across the country in order to then be at places where, like I said, everywhere you go, you're getting patted down, and it's serious. And so we get the stuff, we come back, and the addictive mindset just takes off. We're at a point now where with the money we're making from that, we can't even sit in class because the whole time we're just thinking about whatever next move we're going to make. We're thinking about how am I going to listen to this teacher when I make 10 times more than them. And so we're gaining a lot of notoriety. We're starting to travel to other colleges throughout the Midwest from friends of ours and everything. And it's just our whole week was traveling, selling, and then going back out to Vegas to re-up. We really didn't have time for school, nor were we concerned about it, because the greed and the money coming in and just the addiction to the lifestyle versus sitting in an engineering class, right, trying to learn all these mathematical equations and you're just trying not to fall asleep, it's a big difference. And with this addict mindset, I'm definitely going to choose option A every time. And so things are going well out there. And then finally we go out there and it's the night of the Manny Pacquiao-Floyd Mayweather fight. So early May back in 2015. And the biggest difference that I didn't really, I guess my greed consumed me and I didn't, what's the word I'm looking for, recognize this as being an issue, was that the girl from church school who was dating our connection, they had broken up. So in a sense, I'd lost my collateral because I knew they weren't going to do anything to us as long as she was around. But now she's gone. And of course, like I said, the addict mindset, the greed, we'll be fine. So now we go out there and we meet up with them and we could just tell something's off, right? And so they're patting us down. He's freaking out, saying all this crazy stuff about so-and-so's out to get me, yada, yada, yada. And then he goes, okay, we're going to go meet with this other plug kind of out in the middle of the desert and to negotiate some business. They didn't want to meet at their place, so we're meeting in a neutral spot. We go, okay. So he puts one of his bodyguard type guys in the car with us, and we start driving. And we're outside of Vegas, and then we pull off the highway, and we're driving for like 10 minutes, and we pull off on another road, and now we're literally driving in like sand, like desert terrain, cactuses everywhere. We're in the middle of nowhere. And so they pull up and we get out of the car and we're waiting for whoever it is we're going to meet, and we're smoking a cigarette, just kind of talking business, yada, yada, yada. And then they pop open their trunk. And the one guy pulls out a shotgun that has not a red dot sight, but a laser sight that kind of showed like this helix, because obviously a shotgun has a bigger blast. And he kind of flashes it at my best friend's chest. The other guy pulls out an AR, and then the other dude pulls out his pistol. And my buddy just puts his hands up and goes down right away. I'm totally perplexed because being as distracted as I was about the money and everything, the last thing in the world I was thinking was that, our own plug is going to rob and kill us. And so he goes, this is a stick up. And before I can even respond, I get pistol whipped from the side. I'm getting dizzy and everything. And they take my keys out of my pocket for my car and they launch it into like this area full of debris, desert debris, branches, whatever. And it's the middle of the night. And then they take our cell phones, destroy them. They take a big bag of weed and they pour it throughout my car to make it look like a drug deal had gone wrong. And next thing I know, my best friend and I are face down on the ground. I'm taking shots to the face because the guy, the plug, thought that I was hooking up with the church school girl. And next thing I know, I'm face down looking at my buddy and I feel the barrel of his pistol pressed in the back of my head. And my buddy, same thing, the other guy's got the gun in the back of his head. And there's just this moment of silence. And I can be 100% honest with you when I say that in this moment of silence was the calmest I've ever felt in my life. It made no sense. I'm literally about to die. That's how close I am to dying. Just gone. And keep in mind, right, I'm kind of concussed from the pistol whip. But I swear I hear a voice or something just go, you're going to be okay. And almost immediately after it, one of the other guys goes, man, I don't think we should do this. They go for 10 minutes talking themselves out of it. Finally, they decide to just leave us there for dead. They get in their car. They took all the cash that I had brought up, about $20,000, and they just drive off. And here we are, middle of the desert. My car keys are in this debris. I can hear the rattlesnakes kind of going, and we got to find this key fob because we are not going to survive in this desert. We have no phones, no communication with anybody, and our other buddy is in another part of Vegas waiting for us. And so we took one of the branches of debris, and we took some of our clothes, wrapped it around it, took a cologne, sprayed it on it, lit it on fire, kind of made a little torch so that we could actually see, going through all this debris looking for this little black key fob. And you can just hear the rattlesnakes going. We're freaking out, and we're not having any luck. So finally we decide, okay, we got to wait until morning until we can look for this key again, because we can't see a thing, and we're scared of getting bit by a rattlesnake. And so morning comes, we go back to looking, we find it, we get in the car, we drive to Vegas, we go to a Lowe's. I just walk up to the manager, all messed up, and I just go, may I please use your phone to contact a friend of mine? And I think she could tell that I'd gone through it, because immediately she's like, yeah, absolutely, go ahead. And so I go on Facebook, I tell my buddy where we're at. He gets over there, we spend a night in Vegas waiting for money to get wired to us so we have gas to go home. And so on the drive home, another crazy moment, we're driving and I got to pull over to get gas. And again, middle of the desert. And so I pull over, I see the sign, oh, there's gas at this exit, cool. So I pull over, and I'm driving, and I'm not seeing a gas station. Finally gets to a point where I've driven so far that I don't have enough gas to turn around, and it's at this point my dumbass realizes, oh, we probably missed it. It was by the the off-ramp, and we just didn't see it. So now we're praying that we come across someone or something that can get us help, or we got to call someone. I mean, we're in the middle of nowhere. We don't know anybody in Vegas, at least not anymore. And we're driving, and we kind of go over this hill, and then it's just this vastness of the desert terrain, kind of, cliffs, mountainy looking. And we see just kind of this flat level looking building, just middle of the desert. And we're like, well, we got to pull over here. And so we pull over there, and there's all these nice cars in the lot, like really nice. And there's guys walking in khakis, collared shirts, looking all nice. And we're like, what is this place? We get out of the car. It's a golf course in the middle of the desert. And guess what they use to fuel their golf carts? Gas. So if you after that moment, right, there's something that wants me to get the heck out of this situation and make it home okay. So we fuel up, we go back home, and it's just a absolute nightmare because of that 20,000, not all of it was ours. We had people fronting us money for either product or just kind of investing in us. And it was just a absolute shit show trying to explain what happened, and we're not going to be able to get you your money back. So between the death threats, the people freaking out and everything, it was a long couple months. And so I dropped that trimester at the school in Milwaukee because, like I said, all we were doing was drug dealing the whole time. We didn't think we needed school. And the following fall, I transferred to Drake University in Des Moines. I'm there for a couple months, just not feeling it, and transfer back to Milwaukee. And I'm there for a little bit, and I'm just kind of realizing that college just isn't for me, especially after all the craziness I'd gone through that year before. I just couldn't focus in classes. I couldn't take anything seriously. All I wanted to do was go around, try to sell weed, smoke weed, drink, party. That's all I wanted to do. The last thing I cared about was a degree. And so the term ends, and I just decide I'm going to move to Chicago and try to become an actor. Brilliant. And so I moved to Chicago. I'm living on a friend's couch for a little bit. I get a job, and I'm auditioning all over the place. And then I finally get my own place, and the auditions are not going so hot. I had a lot of competition, very little experience myself. Me and my ego think, oh, I'm a funny guy, right? People will cast me. So that doesn't really work out. And I start to really mess around with the Xanax, like consistently, because I'm finding that I'm having some downtime. And in addition, I start picking up drug dealing again, to the point where I'm traveling to Milwaukee because I know all of these guys from Milwaukee I used to go to school with, and then I'm coming back home, and then I'm going to work, just nonstop. Vicious cycle. Greed, 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 greed. And so I get to a point where I realize, okay, I need help. So this is my first rehab experience. This is spring of 2017. And I go to this rehab, and there's all these guys there, and everybody's doing harder drugs, this, that, and the other, the heroin and everything, and I'm just like, this isn't me. I'm not an addict, and so I leave early, go back to life, and a little bit after that, I start kind of messing around at work with the Oxycontin. And a couple buddies and I at work, we worked at this golf course that was private, and so it was just notorious for lots of drugs and kind of a free-for-all. Lots of drugs, lots of drug dealing, just not the best environment for an addict, and it's a cash-paying job. Lots of money, lots of money. And so we get to a point, right, where marijuana, and it's not doing it for us. Okay, let's, try out some pills. Okay, so we start with the Oxy, this, that, and the other. And we get to a point where one day we couldn't get any Oxy, and a buddy of ours goes, hey, I know a guy that can get us opiates. So we're thinking, oh, more Oxys, cool. And I'm at work that day, and it's my father's birthday. And my grandfather's there that day. And he comes up to me, and he goes, Michael, I'll give you $100 to go and see your parents. Because I had not talked to my parents in about 6-7 months since I'd moved to Chicago because of my lifestyle and everything. And I'm like, yeah, sure, okay, Gramps, whatever. And he puts the $100 in my pocket. And so the golf round finishes up. My grandfather's like, hey, I'll drive you over there. And I'm like, no, I'll meet you over there. I got to drop a buddy off. So this buddy and I we go and pick up his buddy, and then we drive to the west side of Chicago. If you are unfamiliar with the west side or the south side of Chicago, it is areas that literally you will get pulled over for what's called a DWW, which is driving while white, because the only reason that you'd be there is if you're lost or you're picking up drugs. So you're just eye candy to the police. So we pull up to this kind of fenced-in projects, and the guy gets out of the car, and this dude meets him by the fence, and there's literally children playing like 20, 30 feet away. And the exchange goes down. Guy's like, this is the spot. He gets back. My buddy gets back in the car. We take off because we're freaking out about the area we were in. And in the car, I realized that, he didn't get oxys, he got heroin. But I'm at a point where I'm like, I'll try anything, I've been kind of withdrawing off the oxys, and I do that first bump of heroin at my apartment, and it's just game on from there. And so after that era, or that time period, I decide that I'm going to go back to college. Right, I'm just kind of dabbling with the heroin at this point. At this point in time, a $10 bag is lasting me 3 days. I'm just doing little key bumps, going to the moon with my feet on the ground. And I'm just working, and then I decide, okay, I'm going to go back to school, try to give this a shot. So I'm back at college at downtown Chicago, and I'm starting to kind of mess around with the heroin a little more severely, to where I'm living at my parents' house, and I'm just puking all the time because I would snort it, and so I'd always have like the drip, and so anything that I ate or drank was coming up just because of that drip, the nastiness of it. I kind of shake just thinking about it. But one of the days, my mom finds some of the puke because I'd been puking in garbage bags and then trying to hide it in the garage or put it to the side of the house or whatever I could do to hide it, and she finds it, and so she calls me into her office, And she just looks at me and she goes, Michael, you're beautiful. And don't let anybody else tell you any different. I'm just like, what are you talking about? She goes, I found the puke. I know you're bulimic. That's not the case. And in that moment, I felt so bad that I was just honest with my mom. I go, no, that's not the case. Actually, I'm doing heroin. And so there's this big back and forth. She's freaking out, and I convince her, I'll just let me detox at the house for a couple days. I'll go back to life as usual. Okay. And so I get off it, right? You know, I'm okay for a little bit. And while in Chicago, in college, one of the buddies from Milwaukee ends up going to another college in Chicago, and we start scheming again. So we're back to the drug dealing, back to the running around. Now we're in springtime of 2018, that last term. And then going into that summer, I start drug dealing the hardest I ever have. I'm making $6,000 to $7,000 a week, traveling all over. The buddy that I was doing it with basically kind of went off the rails. Got put in a mental institution. Like I told you, he was schizophrenic and everything before. And so I don't hear from him anymore. And so I'm doing this all on my own now. And I'm doing really well at it because I'd learned my lessons from Vegas and everything. And so I'm buying, Cadillac, putting myself in an apartment in, downtown Chicago. Everything's going great. I got the girlfriend. And because of this money that I'm intaking, I start doing heroin very, very heavily, to the point where my habit is getting to about $300 a day just to kind of get by. Sure, there's moments where I can still kind of feel the high, but it was hardly making a dent in my budget, because making $6,000 to $7,000 a week and spending 300 times 7, 2,100, I still got $4,000, sometimes even $5,000 left over. And so doing that, I go to college the next term, and it's just, I don't know how I passed that one semester on paper. I look fine, about a 3.0 GPA. Actually, I was using a lot of the money to pay some people to do a lot of my work for me, and cheating on tests, all that. And it was so bad that I'd be in class, start nodding out, then realize that I'm about to puke, and then it'd just be a rush from the classroom to the bathroom. Sometimes I wouldn't make it to the bathroom, and I'd puke in the garbage can in the middle of the aisle, and that was just such a norm for me. Then I'd just walk right back into class as if nothing happened. And so, being the manipulator that I am, I'm convincing everybody that it's not a problem. I'm hiding it from everybody. Those that know, I've convinced that, I got it under control, and if I start withdrawing, I need this kind of as my medicine in order to get through it. And so finally, it's the end of that spring term, and my parents kind of convinced me, all right, this is getting bad. You should go to detox. And I'm kind of failing the semester anyway, so I'm like, great, perfect excuse to withdraw from classes. This is the second semester. The first semester is the one that I passed, even though I was bad. And so go to detox out in Florida. I convinced them that I don't need 30-day treatment. I'm good after the detox. On the plane ride home, I'm drinking. I get home, and they decide to put me in IOP. Within 2 days, I'm using at this IOP. They finally kick me out. It's getting bad. And then that summer, 2019, I go into another detox, and I decide, okay, I'm going to do the full thing, detox, 30-day, halfway. And so I'm doing it, right? Looks like I'm doing well. Everybody thinks I'm doing well, but I'm on Suboxone, which me personally, I feel is an addiction in and of itself. And I could feel it, because any day that I missed my Suboxone, I started withdrawing like crazy. And so I go through the 30-day program, complete that, and I move into this halfway house on the west side of Chicago. And I'm literally still got a lot of drug dealing connections going on, And so I'm like, oh, as long as I'm not using drugs, right, I can still make money off this. So while I'm there, I'm going out, I'm collecting fronts, I'm moving stuff. As long as I don't have product in the halfway house, the halfway house would take your phone. So me and my brilliance, I have 2 phones of the exact same phone. And they finally one day caught me, and they gave me a choice: either stay here and it's going to be really strict on you, or leave. And I go, hell with it, I'll leave. I move into a sober living home in downtown Chicago. And while I'm there, I just start using again. They were very laid back. Now I'm using kind of a combination of heroin and cocaine back and forth. I'd literally have my dealer pull up to the sobriety house and convince everyone, oh, it's just a buddy, we're going to go to a meeting. Like, just complete bullshit. And so I get kicked out of there, and I get an apartment, and it was so bad that I got this apartment, there's no furniture or anything in it, and so me and my brilliance, I just live in a hotel because there's a bed here, I can just sit in here, do dope, nobody's going to know where I am. And so I'm just doing heroin and cocaine all day, every day. Just have my dealer pull up. I even gave him my debit card. We'd pull up to the Chase Bank, and he'd put it in. Bing bang boop, pull out the money. Easy peasy, $300 a day at least. And so it's getting really bad. I'm starting to run a little lower on funds, and I have all these fronts that I got to collect, but being in my state of mind, I'm too lazy and too messed up on the heroin and everything to go out and collect them. And so talking to my sponsor back home and everything convinces me to go to this program out in South Carolina. And so I go out there, and this program was really interesting. It was kind of a work program. So there was no clinical. You just kind of lived in this community, 100% big book. So they just beat you with the big book. And I'm out here in South Carolina, it's 75 degrees, and I'm wearing 3 hoodies and a blanket because I'm freezing coming off the heroin. And it's getting bad. And so I finally get to a point while I'm there. I got like 30 days there. I finally get a job. And then I find out that there's a guy in the community that has heroin. And so he had left the program or something, but would still come by for meetings. And so just one time I asked him, hey, can you get me some? And so now I'm getting high in the program. And finally somebody rats me out. And back then I was pissed, but today I'm really grateful that they did. And I'm stranded in South Carolina. No place to go. Thankfully, I did have some money left over from the whole drug dealing lifestyle to where I could get a ride and a plane ticket to go back home to Chicago. Now, when I get back home to Chicago, there's a buddy that I met at this rehab in South Carolina who we hit it off really well, and we decide, to start hanging out. And at first we're going to meetings together, right? Everything's going great. I got my apartment finally furnished downtown. It's a studio, really nice spot on Lakeshore Drive, 22 floors up. And we just have a night where we just go, fuck it. And we drive to the west side. I'd pull up in the gas station in my nice Cadillac. Just craziness all over. He gets out of the car, kind of disappears around the corner, comes back with the stuff. We go and we use it, and it was just a mess. We're living in a studio apartment together. Just every day is just a grind for this. And while this is going on, I get a job. I get certified and get a job as a personal trainer. And so I'm personal training people as I'm going through this absolute insanity. And so I finally kick him out. He goes off, does his own thing, and now I'm doing this same thing but alone. And I'm training clients, and in between clients I'm going to the bathroom, I'm getting high, coming back out. My coworkers they're like, we never see you eat, and we never see you work out. And so I'm like, I eat and work out in another gym, or I don't like to eat in the gym, making up all these excuses. But the reality is I'm not eating at all. I just kind of had some size because I'd done a little bit of steroids in the past, a couple cycles, and let me tell you something, being on steroids and heroin, vicious combination. I owe my body an apology letter because that was craziness. I mean, working out on steroids and heroin and not being able to feel like the pump, not being able to feel the soreness or anything. The following days I'd have all sorts of injuries because I'd go too hard or whatever and not be able to feel it. And so very detrimental to my body. I actually have a picture from Christmas time where I'm with my family and it's clear that I'm huge from steroids, but I'm also going through a heroin withdrawal. So everybody at the Christmas dinner table is dressed up nice and everything, and I'm just sitting there in a t-shirt, just drenched in sweat, looking at my mother like, can I please go? So that I do not recommend to anybody. And so doing the personal training, and then COVID happened. So this is March of 2020, sorry. And COVID happens, and so now I'm not able to sell drugs as much because the border of Illinois and Wisconsin's kind of shut down. The supply of everything is kind of all over the place, so getting the stuff is harder. And so now I'm just kind of running off the money that, I had left over from it. And literally every day is just call up the dope man. He comes by, drops off the stuff, use, pass out. I was never leaving my apartment unless it was to go get cigarettes. That was it. And I did this for about 2-3 months until June 14th comes along, and I had a sponsee brother, and my sponsor convinced me to just go to detox. And so I call up the detox place, and they're like, okay, we're going to come pick you up tomorrow. And so I'm using on June 14th, obviously. June 15th comes, and it's the morning, and I am going through withdrawals bad, and I am psycho-dialing my dealer, who always answers and always shows up. He's not answering, and this van's about to pull up, and I'm about to be in a 4-hour car ride, and I was not looking forward to that at all, especially withdrawing off heroin. And so they pull up, and I'm kind of pissed, but today I realized that had that dope man answered and I'd used, I probably would have told the rehab to piss off, probably would have passed out, and I wouldn't have gotten to detox. And so the original plan was to go to detox myself for 7 days, then go back to Chicago, live with the girlfriend for a little bit, and then, try to figure out life. But I'm sitting in detox, and I'm just kind of realizing, man, I'm done. This is nuts. This is only getting worse. I'm at a point now where I'm out of money, and it was getting bad. I didn't even want to know what I was willing to do for the drugs. I had already pawned off all my stuff. I sold my Cadillac. I more so traded my Cadillac to my dealer for heroin. That's how bad it got. And so I finally get to the detox, realize I'm done, and I go, all right, I'll go on and do the 30-day treatment. I'm in 30-day treatment, and while I'm in there, they told me, they're like, you're the first person to come up to us and ask us to put you in a halfway house. And I was like, put me in one that is as far away from Chicago as possible. Because right now, at this point, I'm in Indiana, and I do not want to go back home. Because I realized I needed to hit the reset button on life altogether. Between the ex-girlfriends back home that were triggers to me, the drug dealers, the everything, I had to change people, places, and things. And so I make this decision, okay, I'm going to go out to halfway, and one of the therapists at this 30-day program goes, hey, my daughter is in a place up in Anderson called Grace Recovery and Wellness. I highly recommend it. I'm like, great, done. And while I'm in this 30-day program, I kind of just start fantasizing and thinking, like, what do I want to do with my life? And I decide I want to join the Marines. And so I get to halfway, and that's just my goal. I tell the head of the program, I'm like, look, I'm going to go and try to get recruited. I'm going to be honest about my past and everything, see how it goes. And so I do. And so I'm training for the Marines. I take the ASVAB. I get a 93. Everything's going well. I'm in great shape again because I'm sober and I'm working out like a madman. And kind of like that, I'll be honest, like having a past with steroids it makes it a lot easier for you to rebuild the muscle and get back to that, because muscle memory is no joke. And so I get there and I get enlisted in the Marines. I'm sworn in. I got my ship date out to Camp Pendleton and what would have been this last December. Everything's going great. And then I get a phone call from a federal investigator. And they say, yeah, something popped up in your background check. Took a little bit to show up on our screen, but we're going to have to investigate this. So what had happened was the year before, I had gotten arrested on a heroin charge. And I just did a night in a holding cell, which was obviously miserable, withdrawing on heroin in a holding cell. And I get out, I get I-bonded out the next day, right back into it. Didn't think much of it, didn't really face a lot of repercussions from it until now. And so it's this 2-week process in which they're basically asking for the police reports, letters of recommendation, this whole thing, yada, 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 to see if I'm going to get discharged or if I'm with the opportunity to re-enlist or discharge altogether or no punishment at all. It's this whole process, and I'm freaking out in the beginning. And so, because this was my investment, what I wanted to do was go to the Marines and do however many years there. I realized, hey, I'm really good in structured environments, and what I actually want to do in the long run is kind of bring recovery to the Marines, because I knew that there was a lot of problems with addiction in the military. And so I finally just get to a point where I kind of communicate with God, and I'm just like, listen, if this is meant to be, it'll be, and if not, I have faith that you have something better planned for me. And so I just get in that mindset. It's a couple days before they're going to give me the final answer, and I start kind of planning goals. I'm like, okay, let's just, let's hope for the best, or hope for the best but assume the worst. Let me go over some goals as to what I'd want to do assuming this doesn't go through. And I started realizing, I'm like, okay, I want to work in recovery. I want to start doing bodybuilding, powerlifting, writing out all these goals. And I'm kind of getting excited about it. I don't know what it was, just this feeling, because I just loved both of those fields. The recovery field, I loved talking to and working with other people in recovery. I love working out. I love the competition side from working out. And finally the day comes, I'm driving home with a friend from the gym, and I get the phone call from my staff sergeant, and he goes, bad news, man. You've been discharged without a chance to re-enlist. They saw the word heroin on the police report, and they were done. And so it was weird, because it was almost like a weight lifted off my shoulders. There was no question. I was like, okay, God's testing me. Let's see what you got. And I think a lot of people expected that when I got that news that I was going to relapse or just, go into this horrible mind state. And I just kind of hit the ground running and started working towards these goals. And I knew God answered my prayers, because 2 days later, after I get this phone call, I'm with the head of this program, who also runs a detox permanent housing program for people in 30 days, in which he hires addicts for. And, we just finished up at church. I get in his car, and he looks at me and he goes, you ready? And I'm like, yeah, thinking he means, ready to leave church. I'm like, yeah. And he goes, I'm going to hire you at the rehab. That moment was so powerful for me, because it was God confirming to me, in my eyes, that I'm in the right place, and that I can accomplish all these goals here in Anderson, Indiana. And since that moment, everything's gone great. I now work 7 days a week in the rehab. I personal train a number of clients, some of which you guys are going to see in future videos. My favorite client, I train every morning. He has autism and Asperger's, and every morning I get to work with him, and he is the most positive human being I've ever come across. High functioning. He's like a child, but in all the right ways, and he's super motivated, and he's always there. I've been working with him for 4 or 5 months now. A couple female clients, a couple nights a week. I work out with friends. I'm training for a bodybuilding competition coming up. I had a powerlifting competition a couple months ago that I won in my weight class for the deadlift. I have another powerlifting competition coming up. I'm I've got this YouTube channel going on, and life is just amazing. And I just can't be more grateful for the people around me that have given me these opportunities, the program, just recovery in general, because I realized that from June 15th on, and not that he wasn't before, but especially June 15th on, God's been working in my life, and I see it now, and my mentality has changed completely. And so with my story here, I'm just trying to give the next person hope that it can be done, no matter how far down the scale you've gone, no matter how bad it gets out there, no matter how bad your addiction gets, no matter how hopeless life may seem, there's a solution. And it's not a drug, it's not, anything external, it's completely internal. Life is beautiful now. And that's all I got. What's up, you guys? Hope you enjoyed that video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Big shout out to Grace Recovery and Wellness, Big Time Barbell, Artistic Invasions. More coming your way.